55. Appreciate your joining us this morning, Eagle Nation. We've got you for another hour and change. Joining us is our bud from Sports Illustrated, John's running mate at SI, Ed Kracz. Good to see you, Mr. Kracz. And I'm going to start in a place that we never really talk about as football fans. That would be the quarterback position, he says sarcastically. The comparison between Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, it's just as natural as it gets. The youngest combination of two starting quarterbacks ever. The first ever African-American matchup in Super Bowl history. The number one and number two candidates for MVP. I believe that's the way the voting's going to go when it's revealed right before the Super Bowl is played. So the conversation has to happen. And the other aspect of it, neither one of them is 100%. If you watch them both in the playoffs, Mahomes got hurt in the first playoff game and then played through it in the second. Hurts was hurt before the playoffs ever started and has tried to play his way through it these last two games. I think we can all three agree that neither one of them is at 100%. Which one is being affected more by their injuries in your estimation as of right now?
Jumping right into the quarterback thing. Did you mention the two youngest also? I think they're the two youngest.
Yes.
To start.
Two youngest, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, they have 2 weeks, 12 days now, I guess, to get ready to play in this game. And we'll see whose medical staff is better, I guess. Who's going to have the quarterback most ready to play?
Don't ask Chris Maragos that.
Yeah. Have you talked about that, the trial?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
We'll get to that in the offseason.
I think that they're both affected by it. Jalen still looks like they're hesitant to kind of use him as much as they used to in the run game. They really kind of took the wraps off of him. Was it in the third quarter or the fourth quarter on that one touchdown drive they had to go up 28-7? He ran the ball more and more effectively, but it still looks like he's bothered by that shoulder, no doubt. And I didn't get a chance to see Mahomes in that AFC game much because we were busy after the Eagles win, obviously. But he won, right? 23-20. Looked like he hobbled around. The times I glimpsed the television, there was a time where he was rolling and he kind of hopped around. So I don't know.
Hobbled around to 300 yards and 2 touchdown passes. Yeah. He was so hobbled.
Yeah. And the Eagles didn't really need Hurts to do a whole lot offensively. I mean, he did enough, but I don't know. I think they're both hurting and they're both managing it, and we'll see how it goes after 2 weeks of treatment and rest and healing and all that other stuff.
Yeah, that was my take after the Eagles game, Ed. I think we came into that game. We already know the Eagles were really good, those of us who are around the team all the time. Because of the way that game unfolded, I don't think we learned much more about the Eagles because, Hassan Reddick's 6th offensive play of the game for the 49ers wrecked the game. And from that point forward, San Francisco couldn't do anything with a 4th-string quarterback. And then they lost the 4th-string quarterback, and it became even worse. I joked it turned into a Navy game with, they couldn't throw the ball. It was all running. And so we didn't learn anything. What we thought was going to be the toughest test didn't turn into the toughest test because the Eagles were so physical and so dominant, particularly up front on both sides of the football. You think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Kansas City went through the ringer against Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, how much more can we learn after 20 weeks of the season about the Eagles? I mean, we know what they are. They're a great offensive line, a great defensive line. You probably wanted to learn more about Jalen Hurts and that shoulder injury, but I think even there we saw that it's still bothering him. He didn't run the ball a whole lot. So, we know what the Eagles are, and they're a physical team. They really took offense to the fact that the 49ers didn't think they were the physical, that they were very physical and that the 49ers were really physical. And, the disrespect that Kyle Shanahan showed.
There's that word.
Yeah. I'm trying to block him with you talk about 3rd-string tight ends. I mean, where's Tyler Kroft, their tight end, on that depth chart? I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, Kyle Shanahan, that game is your fault. for getting your quarterback hurt. And then you try the same thing after Josh Johnson comes in to try to block him with Jawan Jennings and bring George Kittle across the formation to block him. Reddick was shot out of a cannon and nearly planted Josh Johnson 3 feet deep into the linked turf. He's lucky he didn't get his backup killed on that play. I mean, listen, Kyle Shanahan, say what you want about him being an offensive mastermind, but this guy just gets his quarterbacks killed. Look at what happened to Jimmy G. He's running the ball late. He gets hurt. Same with Trey Lance. He's gotten 4 quarterbacks hurt this year because all he wants to do is design these mastermind plays to try to, show how great of a offensive mind he is. And he forgets the little things. You got to block Hassan Reddick. He's the one that's to blame for this loss.
That's very true. All right. So
sorry to get fired.
Now we get to talk about Nick Sirianni against Andy Reid. He coached circles around the 49ers head coach last week and the guy who may just win Coach of the Year, Brian Daboll, the week before that. Is this going to be a clean sweep? Can Nick Sirianni outcoach Andy Reid in the Super Bowl?
I don't know. I mean, that to me was one of the untalked about things going into the title game was the Sirianni versus Shanahan matchup. Shanahan has all this experience of the big game, was in the NFC title game last year. I mean, we really haven't seen Nick win too many big games. I mean, obviously he beat the Giants, like you said, and then now the 49ers. So, yeah, I mean, sure. Why not? I mean, he's got a good staff around him, just like Andy Reid does. I mean, this is probably the best matchup you could have hoped for as the season went on, where these two teams playing on the biggest stage because of that coaching matchup with Andy Reid, the former 14-year coach in Philly, the Kelsey brothers, the quarterbacks, just so many storylines with this one.
Yeah.
I think, I say why not? Look, Sirianni has proven that he can beat these named coaches. So, yeah, sure. Why not knock off Andy Reid along the way here and win another Super Bowl?
Disrespect is the theme of the show, Ed Kracz. Nick Sirianni is 5-0 against the Coach of the Year finalists. 5-0. 3-0 against Brian Daboll is probably going to win it. And I think he would be 70-0 if they played that game 70 times.
That's just beyond me that he's going to win the Coach of the Year, really. I mean, I don't. Well,
I think he's done a great job, by the way, Brian Daboll, with what he had. So it's always a sliding scale. Nick has the luxury of he's got the best roster in the NFL. So in a lot of ways, this matchup, Ed, and we're going to have a lot of time to talk about it. We're going to try to get you on next week as well, obviously, but might as well start here. The Eagles, I'm a little surprised they're favorites. I don't know if that has to do with the injury to Patrick Mahomes, because I thought Kansas City would be the favorite in this game. And it was early. There was a lot of fluctuation. It was a pick 'em, then it was +1 Kansas City or whatever it was, -1 actually. And then it went the Eagles' direction. But the Eagles have the better roster. So, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the world. No question about it. Even hobbled. And I think a lot of people boil it down to quarterback versus quarterback. And why are we playing? If it's just quarterback versus quarterback, all right, let's give it to Patrick Mahomes. But it's not. And the Eagles are so well-rounded, so deep. They've proven they can win multiple ways. Very few teams. We always talk about identities in this league. The Eagles don't really have an identity because it morphs on game day. That's what I love about Shane Steichen.
Yeah.
You know from talking to Shane, Shane's going to take advantage. Oh, you're going to give me this? I'm going to pound the you-know-what out of that. And the Eagles have the luxury of doing that. Is that good coaching? Good talent? What is it?
Yeah, I think it's good coaching, and they're playing to their talent on hand strengths. I mean, that's what coaches are supposed to do. They're supposed to, see what they have and then make their plans accordingly, not the other way around where they bring a mindset in and then try to force players into that mindset that might not fit. And, you're right about the identity. We don't know week to week. I mean, they do it running the ball. They do it throwing the ball. They do it with their defense. I mean, every week it seems like there's a different way for this offense to beat you. And, that is troublesome. If you're Spagnuolo for the Chiefs trying to figure out how to stop this offense, and And yeah, I think the coaches deserve a lot of credit. Shane Steichen, especially for, he'll tell you, he'll just run, like you said, he'll just run the same thing over and over and over. If you're not stopping it, he's going to keep running it until you adjust to it. And then once you do, you'll move on to something else. So, that to me is, and when you're practicing those things over and over. I mean, I think it was Jordan Mailata who alluded to Jeff Stoutland's coaching technique is he'll run the same thing 100 times, the same technique, the same drill 100 times over, doing the same thing until you're just sick of it probably as a player, but you're practicing that technique over and over again, 100 times a day, same thing. He'll come back the next day and they'll work a different technique, but he's just drilling it until it becomes so muscle memory that when you're out there, you're not even thinking, you're just going and doing. So, I think that coaches in their preparation deserve a lot of the homework for this. And even Jamal Singleton, you could go down the line with Singleton's running backs. We see Sanders get the 2 touchdowns, and then the second half, it's Kenny Gainwell, and he's just using Gainwell. So, they have a good feel, I think, for what's going on in a game. And then they're not afraid to, switch up if they have to or stay with it if it's working. So I give the coaches a lot of credit.
Guys, let's be honest. One person cost Nick Sirianni the Coach of the Year award this year, and his name is Howie Roseman, because Howie went out and made so many good acquisitions and adding talent that it was like, all right, Sirianni won 14 games, but look at all the talent he's got. So if Nick has a mad on for anybody, it should be at Howie because he cost him the Coach of the Year award.
That's true.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that talent argument, though. I mean, how many teams have good talent that don't win? I mean, it's what you do with that talent. We've seen the dream team come through here, in 2011 or whenever that was. And what did they win? Nothing.
I gotta tell you, before
Andy,
you jump in.
Let me question you there, Ed. What's the difference between this year's team and last year's 9-8 team? 14-3, 9-8. What's the difference? Sirianni became a better coach?
Yeah, possibly. And I think Jalen Hurts became a better quarterback, and he became a better quarterback. Yeah, you got A.J. Brown, and they upgraded the defense. Yeah, that helps. But listen, you can bring in all the talent you want, but if you don't have a scheme or a culture in place, it's not going to work. I mean, Mike McCarthy could have been the coach of the year. Look at all the talent the Cowboys had. They had enough talent for everybody to think they're going to win the NFC East. I mean, it's what you do with the talent, to me, that matters. And yeah, Daboll did a good job because he's got really no talent. But Nick did a good job. Even though he has talent, there's no way, you just don't roll these guys out there and say, hey, you guys are talented, go out and win a game. Buddy Ryan tried that with Randall Cunningham. Hey, just go out and make a play. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a scheme and a culture in place. And that this is the second year of that scheme and culture being in place. And yeah, there were players added to it. But yeah, you have to give Nick credit for doing something with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination. I mean, I do think it helps when you have the deepest roster in the NFL. When you have 5 offensive linemen who are either all pro or pro bowlers, or at worst Pro Bowl alternates, because the voters got it wrong. I've never seen 5 Pro Bowl level linemen. Never. I've never seen it. Even if you go back to the 90s Cowboys, you had Stepnowski, Eric Williams, Larry Allen, Nate Newton, and I think Mark Tuinei was the last one. He wasn't a Pro Bowl. He wasn't a Pro Bowl guy. Isaac is supposedly the worst offensive lineman on this group. He's a Pro Bowl guy. He was an alternate. He should have made the Pro Bowl. This is the best offensive line I've ever seen, certainly since that Cowboys group way back in the day. The defense, and I'm gonna give my boy credit, JG. People say the talent. Hassan Reddick was a really good player. Jody will take his victory lap, and deservedly so. He's been preaching for this team to get him for a while. But guess what? He wasn't this good in Arizona. He wasn't this good in Carolina.
True that.
So it's something to how he's being used. James Bradbury, tremendous player. I loved him. Jody loved him. Savvy as all heck. He wasn't this good even when he was a Pro Bowler with the Giants. Forget about last season. T.J. Edwards, undrafted guy to one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Reed Blankenship Reed Blankenship from Middle Tennessee State. I think Howie gathered the change in his offense. They signed him as an undrafted free agent, and he's out there making plays. So I think part of it is coaching, but this team is really talented too. I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the offensive line. How many first-round draft picks are on that offensive line? One, right? Lane Johnson.
That's it.
Well, Andre Dillard, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Kelsey was a 6th rounder.
Yeah.
Jordan Mailata was a 7th rounder. I mean, again, you want to talk about talent versus, teaching and getting these guys better. I mean, to me, it's all about the coaching staff when you bring talent in like this. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's a 50-50 split. I lean more towards the teaching and the coaching of these players, getting them to play well. I mean, how many first-round busts have we seen come through here before Nick Sirianni was the head coach? I mean, I think you got to do stuff with the talent, and I don't think you get enough credit. I think Howie gets all the credit. Yeah, he did a great job, but you got to give a lot of credit to the coaches too.
It's a combination effort. We can certainly go.
Yeah. But if you want to put a percentage on it, I'm leaning heavier toward the percentage of giving the coaches the credit than I am the talent. Maybe like a 60-40, 70-30 even split.
I'm going the other way. Personnel. I think the coaches are great, but man, you can be the greatest coach in the world. And you see it with guys like Andy Reid and Bill Belichick. No doubt about it, Hall of Famers. You see the down years. Because if you don't have personnel, it doesn't matter how good you are as a coach. And you'll see it with Nick Sirianni, who I think is a great coach, but you can't be this good every year. We'll talk about it in coming months and years when the Eagles have to pay Jalen Hurts and all of a sudden it shifts and you can't go out and do the same things personnel-wise, and it'll become more difficult. It just is. If you don't have personnel, doesn't matter how good you are. That's why Brian Daboll, to me, that's why the Coach of the Year award is so interesting. I think I would have voted for Brian Daboll as Coach of the Year. And I think the Eagles could play the Giants 70 times and beat them maybe 70 times because they're that much better than the Giants and styles make bites. And the Giants just they don't match up well with the Eagles right now. But for the group that he had, to get them to where he got them and winning a playoff game, I think that's impressive. I really do.
Well, we'll just agree to disagree there. I don't know. I'm a big, coaching. I mean, coaching in the NFL means more than any other sport.
Oh, I agree with that.
I mean, you have to be teachers, and I know talent does help for sure. But even if you bring the so-called good talent in, you still have to get something out of it. And that's what the coach's job is to do. And if your talent isn't there, then you have to coach them up like Daboll did. But again, to me, a coach who wins games and isn't 3-5-1 down the stretch, to me, is a better Coach of the Year candidate than the other.
All right, Eddie. John and I discussed this yesterday. Borderline debated this. Jalen Hurts' quote after the game about people didn't, when I first came here, people didn't even want me here. We kind of talked about, was he referring to the organization or not? After going back and re-listening to it and the follow-up question thereafter and his quoting scripture, there's no doubt in my mind that he was talking about the fan base and the Philadelphia media. That he wasn't talking about.
I would tweak this, Jody. I think it was, and then I think it was the fan base and Carson Wentz. That's who I think he was talking about. I want to throw that in.
Oh, you want to throw Carson into the mix? All right, that's quite fair. But you and I talked a little bit. I don't even know how we got there. That the organization different because he was a second-round pick. The organization wanted him. The organization picked him. The organization gave him a chance to start in his rookie year as a second-round pick. First-round picks. Patrick Mahomes played less as a rookie and was a first-round pick than Jalen Hurts did. So it just didn't add up to me that he was pointing the finger in any way at the organization. Was that him just verbal flexing on the Eagle fans and the members of the Philadelphia media who said, what the hell are they wasting a second-round pick on Jalen Hurts for? Was that what Jalen was trying to get at with that quote?
Yeah, he could have been. I mean, maybe when he talked about the organization, maybe he meant players like Carson Wentz. And there was a faction in that locker room that I'm sure was like, what are you doing here? Carson Wentz is our guy. There was a lot of loyalty in that locker room to Carson Wentz. And even the players were, I think, surprised that the Eagles didn't really, the perception was he really wasn't helping the roster at the time because, a second round pick quarterback, when you just sign your franchise quarterback to a big deal, isn't going to help you any. So, yeah, I think there might have been a faction in that locker room that he picked up on too. He's a very smart kid, very perceptive kid. He does a lot of observation, obviously. And I'm sure there was a faction in that locker room that, was surprised and probably didn't welcome him with as open arms as maybe he thought he should be. So when he says organization, I think that's kind of what he's referring to. Obviously, the front office wanted him or they wouldn't have taken him. And then the fans. I mean, you're right. I mean, the fans were the same way as the players. Like, what?
Oh, no, they knew.
What a waste of a pick. I mean, that's what the thought was, is why are we doing this? I mean, why are we taking a quarterback? We have Carson Wentz here. We just signed him to a big contract. Whether you liked him or not back then, he was the guy. Like, what are you doing? You're going to upset the apple cart here by bringing in another quarterback in the second round. And, yeah, so I think it was verbal flexing, but it was also, I think he's spot on with some of his observations.
Yeah. I think the organization part was, if anything, he knew there's a lot of revisionist history here. The Eagles brought him in to be a cost-effective backup. I mean, that's why they brought him in. And the hope was, the best case scenario there was, Carson's injury history, if he shows up in the games he plays, we can spin him off 3 or 4 years down the line and maybe get a first round pick if he shows sort of that was the mentality from the organization. He's certainly not angry at the organization for bringing him in. He was surprised the Eagles drafted him because everybody was surprised the Eagles drafted him.
Yeah, but John, and I saw this yesterday, I think it was on Twitter or maybe it was on TV. He had that Eagle hat pretty damn quick. They showed video of Doug Peterson, and it was, remember, the COVID draft. So Goodell is doing it from his basement. So they go to a shot of Doug Peterson sitting in a room, and he's got a grin on like the cat that ate the canary. They're drafting a quarterback. Dougie was all happy. They go to a shot of Howie at his house, and he's high-fiving his kids because he picked Jalen Hurts. And then they go back to Jalen Hurts. He's got the Eagle cap ready to go.
Well, they do that with everybody. But even those.
You tell me Jalen Hurts had 32 hats there at his.
What I'm saying is the Eagles and teams do this a lot. You hear it in the pre-draft process. They like a player and they pretend they don't like a player, and they don't talk to him a lot. They don't show a lot of interest to feign to other teams. So I think it was a surprise from that perspective, in that there were other teams that really, dove into him and spent a lot more time with him than the Eagles.
They couldn't have dove into him that good if he was the 50-something pick of the draft. He's still sitting there for the Eagles to take.
Well, remember, again, there's a lot of revisionist history. Most people expected Jalen Hurts to be a third-round pick that year. The Eagles got a lot of criticism.
I guess I'm going to have to take another victory lap because I said I thought Jalen Hurts could go at the end of the first round.
Yeah, but it's not about you, Jody. It's about what
sure as hell is here on Birds 365 when the mics are on.
It's about what the NFL thinks, and most people thought he was going. And the Eagles got a lot of criticism, thinking not only because of the redundance of the pick and the strangeness of the pick, and just like last year with Cam Jurgens, different reason, the Eagles got a lot of criticism. The luxury part of the pick. They got a lot of criticism for the spot as well. Oh, you could have got him in the third round. You could have got him in the third round if you wanted to do that. So there's been a lot of revisionist history on Jalen Hurts. The fan part of it, I get on social media every day. Oh, I knew. I knew. I was the guy who knew. No offense, Jody. You're doing that too. But yeah, I do it.
John, do I have to break out the tapes of my WIP
No,
show?
we all do
I was
it.
on the air the night that Jalen Hurts was selected and said, quote unquote, I thought he could have gone in the bottom of the first round. If you're questioning me, you don't trust me, that's one thing. But if I need to, I could provide you with the tapes.
No, here's you're getting all upset. Like, I loved Antoine Winfield Jr. I thought he was one of the best players in the draft. I would have taken him in the first round, but I knew he wasn't in the mix to be a first round pick. doesn't matter what I think. I'm just saying it matters. Most people in the NFL consider Jalen Hurts to be a third-round pick. It's revisionist history at this stage for NFL people to go up and say, "Oh, Jalen Hurts got the majority." The thought process was he got picked before he was going to get picked, and the Eagles got a lot of criticism for that. Is all I'm saying. Now, obviously, people like certain players. I like certain players. You like certain players. I've got players right. You've gotten players right. I've gotten a lot of players wrong. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of players wrong.
Sure.
The point is, the Eagles got a lot of criticism for the pick. I think what Jalen was talking about was Carson Wentz, the fan base, and to a certain degree, the mentality that he was going to be a backup quarterback. But I think that the backup quarterback part, is the third part of the whole thing. But that's just my opinion. Ed?
Well, I mean, we can kind of try to get to the bottom of it more whenever Jalen speaks again, whether it's this week or, next week in Arizona. But I already said what I thought. I thought, there was a faction in that locker room that was Carson Wentz supporters, and I think he recognized that as well. And, that was part of his lumping everybody in when he felt like people didn't want him here. And, I remember that draft when he came out. I'm thinking he's probably the most intriguing player in the draft. I wasn't sure where he was going to go. I actually thought the Steelers were going to take him like 2 picks before the Eagles. I know that they had done a lot of homework on him.
I thought he wasn't going to the 3rd round. You had someone else other than the Eagles taking him in the 2nd round.
I did. I thought he was probably one of the, there wasn't a lot of good quarterbacks, right, in that draft that I can recall. I mean, it was a top-heavy quarterback draft, and then after that, if you needed a quarterback, I thought Hurts was the next one.
Right, he was the 4th best one after the big 3 early: Burrow, Herbert, and Tua. And then for me, it was Jalen Hurts. And the way the NFL moves quarterbacks up the board, that's why I said I thought he could be the bottom of the 1st round.
Right. Well, I thought that in the 2nd round. So I guess I'm saying I thought he was going to be a 2nd round pick to the Steelers, because when it came their turn, I was surprised when they took Chase Claypool, who's not even with the Steelers anymore. And I know Tomlin loved Hurts, and if you like a player and you want to take him, why are you going to wait?
They could have got him in the 3rd round. That's your answer. They thought they could have got him in the 3rd round. They miscalculated.
Maybe that's shame on them then, because you can't wait for 32 other teams. If you want a player, if you like a player that much, like I thought they did, you got to take him when you can take him. You can't wait and say, "Oh, we got to wait another 32 picks before we can grab him."
The Eagles' history, right? They talk about their love of Russell Wilson for years and years and years, all the way up to last season. He was their white whale. We were going to take him. We were going to take him. Yeah, they were going to take him in the 3rd round, and somebody took him before they did. So everything's about evaluation aspect. You're right. If you love a player that much, but it becomes much worse. Now, the Russell trajectory has changed, but remember what he was in Seattle. That would have been a great pick for anybody if they would have taken him in the 1st round. Nobody was going to take him. Now we can fast forward and say Jalen Hurts. The Jalen Hurts today, if you would have taken him top 5, you would have been a genius. But nobody's taking him top 5, and anybody who says that now is playing revisionist history. That's all I'm saying. And the Eagles act like, "Oh, we loved Russell Wilson. We knew. Well, you didn't know enough to take him in the 2nd round. Forget about the 1st round."
Right. So maybe it's lesson learned.
All crap to me is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, maybe lesson learned. And that's why they took Hurts, thinking, we loved what, and they compared Hurts a little bit to Wilson. The Eagles did, similar skill set. So maybe they thought, we're not getting burned this time. We're not going to wait until the 3rd round. We already dodged a bullet because we thought the Steelers were probably going to take him. They didn't. So let's grab them. Let's grab them in around too soon. I mean,
and it worked out. And it worked out for them. And, but it didn't. But that's part of it as well. They didn't draft Jalen Hurts to be a starting quarterback. They didn't. They can say they did now, but they didn't. They drafted him to be a cost-effective backup. They had just signed Carson Wentz to the massive extension at the time. They wanted Carson Wentz to be the quarterback, but they also knew his injury history, and they said, we need a guy who can play just in case and we need a guy who's cheap at the backup quarterback position.
See, and to me, John, that's a key. And again, if I'll apologize ahead of time if this is braggadocious, Carson Wentz's injury history was a big part of it. It wasn't like when we got Carson signed and he plays 16 games every single year. No, Carson misses time. It wasn't just to be the backup. It was the backup to an injury-prone quarterback that you have hundreds of millions of dollars invested in. That makes that pick that much more important because, you're thinking he's going to get a chance to play. He's not just going to sit there and hold the clipboard and just in case he's the safety net. No, he's going to have to step in because Carson always gets hurt. And if the Eagles thought that way, and that was why I was a little surprised by what Jalen said the other night, that it was like they were drafting him to bury him on the bench. Not really. They were drafting, I have you here just in case Carson Wentz went down with another injury.
And how did that 2019 season end before that 2020 draft? Carson Wentz got hurt in the first 5 minutes of the playoffs against the Seahawks when he got hit by Clowney, and they had to bring in Josh McCown, 40-year-old,
tore his hamstring and played.
He's out there still gaming along, but that's still fresh in their minds when the 2020 draft arrives. And
Carson, they made the playoffs for 3 consecutive seasons, and Carson wasn't there for any of them because he got hurt each year. And he started the playoff game against Seattle, obviously, but was out quickly. So in hindsight, everything worked out. I guess my issue is just a revisionist history. Like everyone pretends, and either way, not everyone, but some people, you have the group that says, I knew Jalen, and I'm not talking about you, Jody. I'm talking about
I didn't know Jalen Hurts was going to be this good. I like the player. I thought he could be a first-round pick. MVP candidate by year 3? No. I never said that. I'm not taking that kind of credit.
Nobody knew that. But Howie does the same thing. Like he got the same criticism this year, and I'll toot my own horn. Ed can back me up on this. I had the Eagles. Well, you can too, Jody. I had the Eagles taking Cam Jurgens in the second round for a very long time. I had a good source on that. They really liked that player. And if he was going to be there, and by the way, very similar. Most people had Cam Jurgens as a 3rd round pick, but you never know. It's all about liking. It's all about liking a potential player. And I got told, if he's there, they're going to take him. And they took him. And they didn't need him for this season, barring injury, and everybody stayed healthy, and that's how it worked out. Long term, it might be a great pick. It might not be a great pick. But what it was, a luxury pick. But the Eagles believe in building up front on both sides of the football. And they do it all the time. They took a luxury pick with Nakobe Dean in the 3rd round. That was a luxury pick.
Andre Dillon was a luxury pick in 2019. They had Jason Peters.
And that didn't work out as well.
Dallas Goedert was a luxury pick in 2018. They still had Zach Ertz. They do that
all the time.
They don't draft a player when they need a player. They draft a player with the eye on him stepping in 2 years, 3 years, whatever. But they don't take a player based on, hey, he's got to come in, he's got to start. How many rookies have come in and started for the Eagles in recent years? Not many.
No. And I give credit to one other guy. Just when you talked about Jurgens, I had Dane Brugler from the Athletic. He told me he thought that Jurgens was the best center in the draft, better than the kid that the Ravens took on the 1st round. I was like, nobody agrees with you on that one, Dave. Everybody's got the kid that's going to go in the 1st round as number 1. Brugler, no better than number 2. He actually thought he was the best center in the draft. So when the Eagles took him, you said you thought that there was a good chance they'd take him in the 2nd round. They did. I thought, hey, that might not be a bad pick. It does follow the Eagles' mantra of we can wait a year or two before we got to plug these guys in, and that draft philosophy has worked very well for them over the last 4 or 5 years. All right, Ed, what did the Eagles need to accomplish this week? We know what they got to do next week. They got to go out and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. But what do they got to do this week? Off day today, straggle back into work soon enough. What do they need to do? We debate all year about how much work they put in and ease of practice and 9 injuries. Looks like they're going to have all 22 starters for the Super Bowl. That's pretty damn good. What do the Eagles need to do this week?
I think they need to rest. They need to get treatment, and they need to watch film. I think they need to stay off their feet, get their legs back, and then kind of slowly ramp up into, practice mode. That's really the most important part, I think, of this week is stick them with some film, make them watch film, maybe go over some technique stuff again over and over. But most importantly, just rest, get treatment for your bumps and your bruises. We'll see. Landon Dickerson had an elbow issue in that game. Maybe today Nick Sirianni will tell us, what that situation is. But again, 12 days till you play, there's no need to be out there in full pads, hitting each other. I just say take it easy, man. Rest, get your treatment, and watch film.
Yeah, especially Jalen Hurts. Just rest that shoulder.
Lane Johnson and Miles Sanders with the knee that looks better, but there's a lot of guys. Jordan Mailata's shoulder still, I don't think, is 100%.
No, everybody's banged up this time.
Everybody is.
Everybody. Exactly. At Kracz E, follow Ed on Twitter, si.com/NFL/Eagles. We got bogged down. I apologize. Kept you too long, Ed, but I appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
I'll leave you with this as far as when they do get back on the practice field in this bye week, and we have already we have some experience with this because the Giants they had the bye leading up to that game.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Jalen Hurts wasn't throwing the football at all on Thursday. It was a big story. And is he taking a step back? People shouldn't worry, right? If they're resting guys, don't worry about it.
No.
Is that your advice?
Yeah, don't worry. These injury reports that come out, listen, just take them with a grain of salt. These guys are just getting their body back in shape. That's all. The guys aren't even talking. Lane Johnson talked to us after the game, first time in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Hassan's focused, man.
And he says, I get my massages during the time you guys are here, and I got to make sure I hit those because my body's
working for him.
It's working for him. No doubt. That's a lot of these guys now is they're just getting their treatment. And that's what I think this week is for mostly is getting that treatment and making sure your body's right. This is such a long season. We're over 6 months already since training camp opened, and they're still playing. It's pretty remarkable.
What Ed Kracz is telling you folks is the individual who gets the most physical workout this week will be the coach with his finger on the rewind button in the film room to make sure they get a good look at what the Chiefs do.
You guys make sure you get your rest too, right? Big week ahead next week.
Grind,
so you guys got to rest up too.
Grind. It's a big week for Ian Book and Trey Sermon. They'll get some work in practice.
Eddie Kracz from Sports Illustrated here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout, come back. We're going to have a good guest in hour number 2 as well. Chris Landry from LandryFootball.com, former NFL scout, coach, just a good all-around football mind. We haven't had him on since October. I didn't even realize it had been that long. Shame on us for not punching him up. Always good when he jumps aboard. Chris Landry is going to join us coming up in just about 15 minutes from now. So stay here on